think we're live.
Hey everyone.
Hey everybody. Welcome this morning to this live on Channel Makers. It's been a long time since we've been live on Channel Makers. We are just getting everything rolling. It'll take kind of a few seconds for everything to come together. But in the meantime, we're going to be taking some questions. We're going to go over some stuff. We're going to be talking thumbnails for the first portion of this. But then after that, we're going to be taking questions you have. We're also going to be taking your thumbnails that you submit and hopefully looking over a couple of them. So anyway, feel free to start throwing those into the comments. Hopefully we can get to as many as possible. But we're excited to be here.
Yeah, we're really excited. It has been a long time, and it's fun to go live and get your questions real time. And we're going to go over some thumbnails real time.
Yeah.
First, let's get started with just some exercises that you can do on your own. So I think this is helpful because if we, for some reason, don't have time to get to your thumbnails when you submit them this morning, or even if we do, but then, later on, maybe you make the fixes that we suggest, and later on you have more questions as your channel evolves about your thumbnails. These are some exercises that you can do on an ongoing basis that should help you to keep improving your thumbnails quite a bit.
Definitely.
And we've got 3 here. So the first one is to just spend, it won't take long, 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
And go through just your YouTube homepage. I'll show you. I pick here. Just the main page on YouTube. You could go on your own YouTube account or use like an incognito browser and be logged out. Either works, but I think it works a little bit better in this case to actually be on your own account because probably more will appeal to you, but you could try it both ways. And just go through and see if anything looks interesting. Don't overthink it. Just what do you actually feel like watching? And then add it to your watch later. Just go to the 3 dots, save to watch later. And then after you've added maybe 10, 15 videos, go to your watch later list and look through the videos you added and try to identify why that video caught your eye in the first place. What was it, the thumbnail that stood out? Most likely you saw the thumbnail before the title. So what about that thumbnail maybe made your eyes stop? And then at that point, what made you look at the title? And what was it about the video that made you feel like you wanted to watch it either right now or later?
Yeah. And
just try to think, was it promising something novel? Was it maybe, did it seem like it was going to be entertaining or like something you had never seen before? What was interesting about it? And then try to take note of that. You could actually take notes too. And then move on to the next one and go through all 10 or 15 videos that you saved and try to just kind of get used to figuring out what makes you want to click on a video and watch. And a lot of the time those same elements are going to apply to whatever videos you make. It's kind of just practicing identifying with why people notice the thumbnail and click on the thumbnail. The second one is to guess the topic of the video or guess even the title. But the exact title wording does not matter here. It's the topic. And so what you do is you'd go back to your homepage, look through videos, probably still ones that kind of catch your eye. Although if a video is making it to the homepage, every once in a while YouTube will test a smaller video, but usually they're videos with pretty high views. If you find that on your own channel, there are a lot of low view videos, then you might log into an incognito browser and then you'll definitely, or log out of your YouTube channel and then use an incognito browser, then you'll definitely get a lot of videos that have very high views. And so those are obviously fairly successful on YouTube. And so this exercise, what you'll do is you will look at a thumbnail, excuse me, and then you will try to guess the title without looking at the title. So look at the thumbnail first, don't let yourself look at the title, and try to think, do I even know what this video is about? This video, for example, you can't really tell what it's about without looking at the title. And so that tells you something that with all of your videos, the thumbnail does not have to explain the entire video. A lot of people over-explain with thumbnails. And that's just a fun trick. And then there's some things that, like this, is a little more obvious. And that's okay, too. This video is also doing very, very well, this hair growth one. But it's just a really good exercise because it sort of starts to get you used to what these videos look like, what the thumbnails look like, and really how much information you're getting from the thumbnail versus how much they're giving to you in the title. Because a lot of times, thumbnail just catches your eye, and the title is what is really going to tell you more about what the video is about.
Just
Any
a quick
input?
note. Yeah,
Yeah.
just a quick note. I know that a lot of times when we plan our thumbnails and titles for our videos, we do, I don't want to say overthink every time, but this is one where it's really easy. You want to tell the whole story in the thumbnail, but a lot of times it's just not necessary. You know, if you think about an advertisement on a billboard, you're not getting the whole story there, but it's just something to catch your eye and then to bring you into whatever text is there, in this case a title. So a thumbnail should just be intriguing. I think more than making it tell the entire story. And like you said, on some of these examples, you can definitely tell more of the story than others, but it's just not necessary to tell the entire story. And so I would say, of course, try not to overthink it, but do your best to make them connect. So, you know, put elements in the thumbnail that definitely connect with the title so that when people see it, they're interested. And then when they see the title, it kind of like clicks. You know, it's like the two pieces of this puzzle kind of click together and they go, okay, that's something that I'd love to watch. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of mention that. But overall, thumbnails can be very complicated. It feels like they can be super complicated. You know, we want them simple, but we want enough detail that people understand kind of what the video is about or what it might be about. And so there's probably a balance there. And I love the first kind of exercise that you talked about, going into videos and saving them to watch later. I love that tip because there's definitely something to be said about finding the videos that you like to watch, and seeing. And as people who are trying to do YouTube and have that kind of YouTube focused mindset, I think we have some unique insight and kind of perspective into what makes a good thumbnail. So if you get a great list of 10 or 20 videos with thumbnails that were intriguing to you, then that's probably a pretty good place to start. It's not going to be perfect, but it gives you kind of a starting place.
Yeah, for sure. And I like what you said about them connecting because, yes, often you look at the thumbnail and you can't guess what the title is. But once you do read the title,
right,
you do want them to connect at least enough that you're not just totally confused as to why they have that thumbnail for that video.
I will say there are some times where the thumbnail seems totally random and it makes me look at the title because I'm like, what is this video even about? And so that's maybe one way to go about it. I wouldn't say it's the best way to go about it. You don't want to make a totally confusing thumbnail, but sometimes that has worked for me.
Yeah, it can work. Another thing is, like Nathan said, you don't have to do all three of these exercises. In fact, probably start with just the first one or whichever of these you like the best and practice that for a while. It'll definitely get you started. You don't have to do them all at once. Okay. Let's see. So the third one is this one's harder, but to try to look at the title alone. And then I think one way you could do this is maybe kind of highlighting the whole page and then pasting. It'll be a mess. I'm not even sure if that would work. I have not found a good way to do it. Maybe take a paste paper and hold it over. But try to just do the opposite where you look at the title without the thumbnail. And then there's a couple things you can do from there. You can try to guess what they did with their thumbnail. Or you could also just try to practice and think about what you would do with your own thumbnail. And then look at what they did for comparison. And if it's a really big successful video, especially if most of the videos are successful on that channel, it's likely that they kind of know what they're doing and maybe theirs are better than yours. So you could take some hints from, are they more zoomed in than you would have been? Or do they have fewer elements? Maybe you would have put 4 words on the screen and they have none or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 exercises that you can try out on your own channel. And I think kind of just alternating them or doing them whatever days you feel like you need a little bit of help and a little bit of practice will really help you with your thumbnails.
Definitely. Well, should we we have a couple more general guidelines, but then we'd kind of love to look at some of your guys' thumbnails.
Yeah.
And I know that, just to kind of call it out here, I know in the chat the links weren't working. That's totally okay. We did leave a message there, but if you would like us to review one of your thumbnails, just leave your channel name in a comment. And we can either just look over maybe one of your more recent thumbnails, or if you have a specific video title, we can do our best to find that one as well. So we'll do that pretty soon here.
Yeah, good catch. Okay, so general guidelines. These are just mistakes that I think are most common. Obviously, it's not going to apply to everyone, right? Most people, with every element. So let's say, or anything that you can tweak with your thumbnails. There's going to be kind of 2 sides to it usually. Like for example, if it's a number of elements. You could have a thumbnail with a lot of elements or a thumbnail with hardly any elements. Most people, beginner channels, are using too many elements, I think. So on that one, most people need to go more towards fewer elements. Analogies. Do you want to talk about that one?
Sure. Okay, sorry, number 2 here.
Yeah.
So the number 2 guideline, we just put, don't use an analogy that will be explained in the video that they haven't watched yet. This is one that I think that we've done before.
Yep.
It's a really easy thing to fall into because you are already familiar with your video content. You're already familiar with the examples that you're giving or the analogies that you're using. So it's really easy to go, oh, I have a really great way to show this visually on a thumbnail now. The problem is the viewer hasn't seen the video yet, and so the analogy to them may make zero sense at all. You know, like if we're talking about 10 best YouTube tools or whatever, and we're like, oh, let's do a hard hat and a hammer and a saw and, you know, have 6 different arms sticking out with different tools. It's like, okay, if you watch the video, that thumbnail could totally make sense because we're talking about tools, right? You may add a little YouTube play button or something on the thumbnail too, but for someone who hasn't watched the video, they're going, wait, is this a DIY channel now? Are we talking about home renovations? Why are there tools? So that's just one example, and it's okay to use a little bit of an analogy, but it just has to be one that's completely obvious to as many people as possible without watching the video. Again, it's a very easy trap to fall into, so just try to take an objective look at your thumbnail or have someone who hasn't watched the video or watched your edit, have them look at your thumbnail. It could be a friend, it could be a spouse or a significant other, anybody who could say, yeah, I don't really get either, oh yeah, that thumbnail's awesome, this is what I think the video would be about, or they could say, man, I don't know anything about what that video would be about based on the thumbnail. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a few reasons why that's really important. And one of them is that if it just gets too busy, if you're trying to explain too much, and there's like lesser versions of this. I think maybe it sounds kind of obvious, like, okay, yeah, you don't want a thumbnail that they would need to watch the video to understand, but maybe you think, well, the word tools is in the title and there's tools in the thumbnail, so it makes sense. It still might not. It's still like, you have to remember too that if you're showing the thumbnail to friends and family, which is a good idea, do that. But you have to remember that they still likely have the context of knowing what your channel's about, and maybe even the video, or I was assuming you wouldn't tell them what the video's about, but they know what your channel's about, and they also are taking the time to pause and stare at your thumbnail for even 10 seconds is more time than you're going to get from almost anyone just scrolling on their main page on YouTube. So for those reasons, it's just really important to not underestimate this one. You know, you might think, well, they technically would not have to watch the video to understand it. Yes, but how quickly can they understand it?
Right.
Either way. So, and there's a big difference between intrigue and just throwing them off, I think. Like, if you have a really simple thumbnail, but maybe it doesn't tell them a lot, maybe they would look at it and say, no, I don't know what this video would be about by just the thumbnail. But then you add it with the title, and then they'd have a pretty good idea. But that's a lot different than just kind of throwing them off completely. Like, if I saw a thumbnail with a lot of tools, well, I'm probably not planning on making anything in the near future. And so I'm going to keep scrolling, and I might totally miss that that's a channel and a niche that I actually do care about.
Right.
So, yeah, great points. Okay, next I put, don't use cursive unless it's a channel about calligraphy. And even then, probably don't use cursive. Cursive is kind of an exaggeration, but any font that is hard to read is absolutely not worth it in your thumbnail, even if you think it looks better or maybe you think it fits your kind of branding style more. It's really just not worth it. People have to be able to read it quickly.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's one where it's tough. You know, you want to add elements that maybe you have in your brand. You know, maybe you've used some of these other elements in your videos, or maybe you have kind of an adjacent website where you've used these fonts or different things. And that's something that's very, your font could be potentially very branded or brandable. But in a thumbnail, you really want people to understand pretty much every element on the thumbnail just as quickly as possible. And so if and especially for younger audiences, I would say older audiences probably have a better grasp on cursive writing or more difficult to read fonts. But there's probably, like, the older they get, the harder it is to read. The younger they are, they have no idea what it says. And so you really just want to make it as easy for everybody to understand. And usually that just means using more basic fonts. Yeah,
which is pretty common theme with branding in general, even off of YouTube, is that you usually want more simple fonts, easy to read. Another thing is to keep that consistency with whatever branding you currently have. If you have a website or you already have fonts you use, but maybe they are just slightly too complicated for YouTube, then you could try to just find a font, maybe kind of a standard go-to font, to add to your almost your font list, your branding, and then hopefully it goes well with the brand or the font that you're already using, but it's a little bit more simple for your thumbnails, but doesn't like totally clash with whatever font you're using for everything else.
Yeah, for sure. Just a quick note kind of before we move on, anyone who just joined us, we will be reviewing some thumbnails here coming up. So if you didn't catch our announcement earlier or some of our earlier comments, if you'd like to get one of your thumbnails reviewed, just leave your channel title in the comments. And then if you have a specific video, you could leave the video title. We'll do our best to find it. Otherwise, we'll just review your most recent video thumbnail. So you guys can do that kind of while we finish up this section.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to talk about colors?
Sure. I don't know if I'm the best candidate to talk about colors here. I actually am totally colorblind. But I think that, so our number 4 here, some channels are making their colors more vibrant. There's something about the color scheme or whatever colors you're using in your thumbnail to be more seen. It's very popular. I would say especially in kind of entertainment style channels or thumbnails. They're just really making their thumbnail so much more vibrant. And so a thumbnail with more muted colors or a softer color scheme may just not get recognized as much. There's probably a balance there because I've seen some thumbnails where it's like, holy cow. I mean, it almost looks cartoonish, and it's just like everything's so vibrant and there's so much contrast. But I would say it would be definitely something worth testing, trying to see if it helps catch more viewers' attention. But it might also, something way far, super vibrant may not be what your audience is used to or what they're looking for. And so you might want to just test it before you actually make a total shift. Maybe your audience, if you're in the farmsteading or gardening or whatever, if you're in that sort of niche, maybe super vibrant colors could make sense for some thumbnails, but maybe it doesn't make sense for all thumbnails. So anyway, there's probably a balance there, but whatever you do try, you just test it first. Do maybe a little series of tests before you go all in on a new thumbnail style.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Good point. Cool. And then fewer elements. I think I keep coming back to this, but look at this, and this is just a random homepage. Like, we didn't curate this at all. This just happens to be what's showing up this morning on our channel.
I don't know if it's showing.
Oh, yeah, let me transition.
There we go.
Thank you. Okay, so how many elements are in each of those videos? This is just what's on the homepage. Yeah. They all have millions of views. Very few elements. The typical beginner will have, several objects in their thumbnail and maybe 5 to 7 words. These are so much more simple than that. And every once in a while you will see a video with more elements that does really well. Even this one, for example, the 7 habits of highly successful YouTubers, they're just showing one point. And I think a lot of beginners would say, okay, well, it's 7 habits, so I need to have 7 little bubbles, or maybe you would know to blur out some of them because you can't really fit 7, but you'd be trying to show that there were 7. Here, they're only showing 1. There's a couple sort of faded in the background, but there's still only 2 more. They're still not trying to get 7 in because they don't really care if you know that there's 7 when you see the thumbnail. Yeah. They care that your eyes stop long enough to read the title. Yep. And then you'll realize that there's 7. They don't both have to give you that information. Yeah. All of these. They're very few elements, very few words.
I think this ties in, kind of not to move over too quick to the last one, but one element that we've seen, we did a big thumbnail study earlier this year. And one of the pieces of research that I specifically did was looking at kind of what's trending in thumbnails, kind of what's going on, 2023 thumbnails. And one thing and anyone who looks at the homepage or anything recommended, you're going to see this over and over again. And it's really just that these thumbnails are zoomed in. It is really focusing on fewer elements, bigger faces, bigger elements. And you can totally see that. I mean, just even some of these top ones. I mean, 2 faces basically on this thumbnail taking up the entire thumbnail. here, the face is taking up essentially a half of the thumbnail. The face, over and over again, we see that big faces all over. And even if they're not ginormous on the screen, they're still big enough to be recognized. And I think that's the key. You are essentially anyone who's on the face of a thumbnail. If your face is on your thumbnail, you are a big piece of the brand, and people will recognize you, and you will become part of the reason people click. And for smaller creators, if you're in that boat, it's a good place to start. Maybe not a ton of people are recognizing you and going, oh, maybe this is the creator that I'd love to watch. But that's definitely a big part of it. And anytime you get a subscriber, they're going to be looking for your face on a thumbnail. So anyway, zooming in, bigger elements, bigger faces, fewer elements overall, I think is really, really key. I've also noticed, and this is a little bit of an aside, but a lot of thumbnails, kind of 2023, they're not overly... I'm going to say this and then I'm going to backstep a little bit. They're not overly photoshopped. And what I mean by that, or whatever, Canva, a lot of them have a more simple or almost screenshot looking vibe. Even if they are photoshopped, they have more of that feeling. And we're seeing that here. Right here, there's one. This one is a little bit more, you can tell there's been more done to it. But then here looks kind of screenshot-ish. Another one here. So anyway, I think that's something else that has helped me realize that we don't necessarily need to overthink it. I think it's good to have the correct elements on there, but it doesn't have to look overproduced. You want it to look simple and underproduced, even if it did take a lot of production effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some channels you'll notice, like Mr. Beast and Ryan Trahan. A lot of those people, like you were talking about with the super oversaturated, vibrant colors, some of those do look, obviously they did a lot to it. But yeah, definitely the overall trend is going in the direction you just said, Nathan. And that's important to notice. Don't get so caught up on, the biggest channel on YouTube is doing this one thing.
Right.
If 90% of the other really successful channels are doing the opposite, then likely the opposite is still trending more than whatever that big channel is doing. And maybe that's just more specific to the niche of that big channel. But yeah, absolutely. That's interesting how these trends kind of go in different directions. Yeah. Okay, so quick announcement, and then we will get on to accepting your thumbnail questions and reviewing your thumbnails. So the announcement is that we are starting a public podcast. We've had 2 podcasts for quite a while, but they are part of Project 24. And so if you aren't a member of Project 24, you can't listen to them. And we're still going to keep doing those podcasts because they're awesome. Those 2 podcasts are much more tailored to kind of answering questions from our community and things that our Project 24 community members are specifically wanting to know and struggling with. But this new podcast, we're going to be interviewing other creators. It's going to be a lot of YouTube stuff, but we're also going to talk to people about people that are experts on other platforms that we don't know so much about, socials, things like that. We're going to be talking a lot about blogging. We do a ton of blogging here. We're going to be interviewing people on that, and we're mostly probably going to keep doing experiments. And that's what we're so excited about with this podcast is we're going to pick challenges and an amount of time, maybe 30 days, maybe 3 months, maybe a week, depending on what the challenge is. And it might be a challenge around Instagram or YouTube. Right now, we're going to be kicking it off with the YouTube challenge and just testing how it works and then letting you know how it went, what we do differently, and also getting the episodes along the way so that you can follow along with us and do your own challenges, or you can just listen. So, what's working, why are we pivoting, what strategies are we using? We really want to take you behind the scenes and have a chance to test out more things and have a platform to show you without having to update every single week. Because if we do a challenge, we still don't want to make a video on Channel Makers about it every single week. If we did a 30-day challenge, we can't really make 4 videos on Channel Makers about it because it would get too redundant, especially if anybody isn't particularly interested in that challenge. But the podcast is going to be an awesome platform to really just experiment and test things out. And that's something we found from you guys when we've asked you in the YouTube community. You said you want more experiments. So we're going to be doing that. And we're also going to be collaborating with other creators to learn from them and bounce ideas off each other and just give you more helpful content. So we're really excited, and it's launching this Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this one. This is one that I think we've had some sort of idea for this, even for a couple years. I love the idea of the challenges, I think number one, that's going to be so awesome. It's going to, keep us in the trenches, making sure that we are actually doing and learning and understanding what's going on with YouTube and other platforms that we'll learn about. But then also getting to talk and work with the other creators. I love that element, especially on YouTube, the kind of collaborative environment that it is, and just learning from other people's experiences and hearing what has made them the creator that they are. Yeah. Anyway, I'm super, super excited. So you guys will have to tune in for that. Is there anywhere right now that they can find that, or do they need to wait a little bit longer for that?
Till Wednesday. On Wednesday, you'll be able to find it. We're going to have it on a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Awesome. So I will it's a good question. I'll put everything in a community post on Channel Makers on Wednesday, announcing where you can listen to it. We're going to have it on all of the major podcast platforms, but also on YouTube's podcast platform. So you'll be able to watch it right on YouTube, and we're videoing it as well.
Yeah.
So it'll be kind of extra YouTube videos.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah. And, we are kicking it off with the YouTube challenge, and I mentioned that there's other platforms we're going to go over. You might only do YouTube right now, and that's awesome. A lot of times all we can handle is one thing, but a lot of these platforms we're going to be picking the platforms if they go well with each other. With YouTube, I don't think we're really going to use a social media platform if we don't think it would pair well with people that have a YouTube channel, because we primarily focus on long form content here. And we're not going to just give you some random social media strategy to follow if it's not going to build off of your YouTube business or what you're already doing. So I think it'll be really helpful. Okay.
All right. Should we dive into some thumbnails here? Okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to try to get to as many as possible. I doubt that we'll be able to get to everybody, so I'll right up front apologize for that. But maybe we can try and rapid fire these a little bit, kind of give our first impressions. We're probably going to give some impressions kind of based on some of these guidelines and principles that we just shared. So be ready for that. We're going to be fairly nice. We're gonna do our best. But here's what I'll do, Julia. I have the chat running here.
Okay.
I'll give you the channel name, and we can look it up here on the streaming laptop.
Perfect.
And then we will, unless they specified a specific video, we'll just look at their most recent video or their most recent thumbnail. So the first one is T Ryan. So that's capital T, capital R, YAN, space learn, space bikes.
Bikes?
Yep. There it is. All right, and we can share the screen for everyone else to see. Okay, so let's see. It looks like some sort of automotive channel. So this is going to be really interesting. So we're going to be looking at these thumbnails kind of as someone who's very unfamiliar with your niche, and so we'll do our best. Hopefully you'll be able to get an idea of what we think as someone who's just brand new into this. So should we look at most recent?
Good idea.
Okay, and I'm going to do a little zoom here. Okay, first thoughts, Julia. What do you think?
Overall, they're pretty good.
Yeah. So the first thing that stuck out to me, large elements on the screen.
Yeah.
We have a large, I'm sure, car part. I'm not sure what it is. Large, easy to read text, and then some sort of interesting face here, kind of all pointing, kind of over to this part. To me, seems like a very decently well done thumbnail.
Yeah, absolutely. The contrast with the black and yellow, it works okay, but especially when you have like the little yellow behind you, I think it makes the yellow text stand out a little bit less. So anywhere you can get the contrast and just bright, you do have those dark colors, which is okay, but try to, when you take pictures of yourself or the object for the thumbnail, make sure they're really bright so that stands out and you don't get too dark of a feel for the overall thumbnail so that you can see the elements well.
Yeah, so one thing and I can see you have, the text is a little bit blocked, and you can kind of see there's some depth to the text. You might just try doing a different color border on the text. Maybe here kind of a white border would just help it pop a little bit more. I can tell you put some good time into this thumbnail, just with the perspective that you've done, and then I see this little glowing element behind your hand. I think that overall, I can tell you've done good work on this thumbnail. I think there's just a couple little things like helping the text pop a little bit more, maybe even around yourself. You'll oftentimes see creators highlight certain elements, kind of around their head or around kind of the main portion of the thumbnail. So anyway, kind of first thoughts there. I'd say generally speaking though, I think you have many of the main elements that we kind of talked about earlier. So pretty well done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, the perspective, that is really good. Awesome.
All right. So we go to another.
Okay.
All right. Okay. We're looking for Hobbyscapes. This is all one word. Hobbyscapes HQ. Oh, sorry. It's still zoomed in. And there it is. All right. And it says, wouldn't mind some general tips for my thumbnails. Thanks, guys. You're welcome. Happy to help. Okay, well, let's just look at some of these more. I believe these are the most recent. Is that right?
Probably most popular.
We go to videos.
There we go.
There we go. We'll just do a little zoom. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. Okay, first thoughts on this thumbnail. I love that there's kind of this one major element to it. I'm not sure what Purigen is, but for someone who's in your niche, I think that they would probably go, oh, that's something that I either want to know about, I've been looking for, but also as someone who's just not familiar with it, I would definitely reference the title to go, well, I'm seeing greenery in here, I'm seeing some sort of maybe chemical or, supplement, plant supplement is what I would guess, and it looks like the secret to crystal clear aquarium water. So yeah. I was close. So, those were kind of my assumptions based off what I saw just in this thumbnail, not being familiar with the channel.
Yeah. So one thing to consider there, and I don't know your audience, I don't know this topic very well at all, but the goal of the audience with this Purigen, if they don't know, because you're saying the secret to crystal clear water, so that implies that maybe your audience doesn't know either. They have not heard of this project, and you're saying this is the secret to crystal clear water. Mm-hmm. So another direction you could have gone, not necessarily better, but another direction you could have gone is like a half and half thing, just like you did with a couple other thumbnails here. And if you somehow are able to make a fish tank look really murky on one side and then really clear on the other, and maybe you don't even need any text on the thumbnail at all. You're just showing the thing they don't want and the thing they do want. And then the title says the secret to crystal clear aquarium water. You wouldn't even have to tell them it's about Purigen until they're in the video, unless you want it to be better for people that are searching for it. So that'd be another way is, just consider, does your audience know what Purigen is, and is that going to make them want to click, or maybe giving them the end goal. But I really like what you did, like this with this one right before it, the changing substrate. You did kind of show the difference, and that's really helpful. And I like the font you're using. Yeah. It stands out pretty well. You could probably afford to make the text a little bigger, especially if you only have 2 words like that. Slightly bigger, but I think it definitely works. Yeah,
and a couple other notes. It looks like most of your thumbnails are faceless, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if that's kind of what you're going for. A face does always help the branding, in my opinion. And then kind of for this first Purigen thumbnail, again, something that might have worked really well since it is the secret to crystal clear aquarium water, which I think is a great title. If you could have had maybe similar to the last thumbnail we looked at, maybe if it was you holding up this product, maybe it's blurred out, creating again some sort of intrigue, I have the secret to crystal clear water or aquarium water, here's what it is, but the viewer doesn't know what it is because it's blurred out. So kind of creating a reason for them to click. That's just another way to go, or, kind of another direction, not necessarily the right direction, but definitely something to potentially try. So overall, pretty good looking thumbnails here.
Just one more tip going forward. A lot of your thumbnails look pretty similar to each other, which you do want some level of consistent branding, so it's not completely a bad thing. But you don't want them to seem so similar that people wonder if they have watched the video already. So if you get a little more variety somehow, then that would be great. What happened here?
Was it just the zoom maybe? All right. Next up, we're going to be looking at the channel Akira.g.
AK?
Yes. AKIRA.g.
Hey, so I played the...
Okay. Awesome. Go to most recent. get some initial thoughts here.
Yeah. So the colors don't seem to have really any consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you could get a little bit, narrow it down to 2 or 3 colors.
Yeah.
Maybe some more consistent fonts that you use more often. Because looking at this channel, like from the wide angle, you can't really tell. I mean, a couple videos look like they'd be on the same channel, but a lot of them are not recognizable. And as you build your audience, you're going to want people to recognize your thumbnails, especially if they like your content. Then you want them to, on the homepage, see, oh, he put out another video. Just because people subscribe does not mean they check their subscribe notifications. And you're also going to have a lot of viewers that are not subscribed, but still enjoy your content. So you really want it to be recognizable for them when YouTube just kind of suggests it on the homepage.
Yeah.
What else?
I those were kind of some of my same thoughts as I kind of just scrolled through some of your most recent thumbnails. And it does like some of these videos are older and then it looks kind of like you kind of restarted. So I'd say there is maybe a little bit better consistency on these most recent videos. I do see some fonts that are being reused. But overall, yeah, just a little bit more consistency there. And also, on your, just since your channel name isn't niche specific necessarily, you have kind of a banner here. It says music is important. So it gives me, these are all kind of clues that help me understand maybe what these videos are about. But as a user, maybe looking at this video on a recommended page or, showing up on the sidebar, I would maybe just have a hard time understanding what the video is or just generally, even very generally speaking, just from the thumbnail. I would definitely have to look at the title, which this is how NFS Unbound Soundtrack should sound. So anyway, I think that together the title and thumbnail can work, but I would definitely make some of those few adjustments that Julia mentioned, just for a little more consistency. And I do see on some of your older thumbnails, you do have some face elements. That's one that I'm just a big fan of, again, especially for smaller channels. Bigger channels, it's important too, but for smaller channels, there's not much that we have as smaller channels. And I say we're all building smaller channels too, but there's not much that we have for branding. Maybe it is a font, maybe it's a couple colors, but everyone else has that too, right? The only really unique brandable element that you have is you. And so as the YouTube creator, if you do show your face on the channel, if you don't, I get it's a whole different ballgame. But if you do show your face on the channel, don't hesitate to put your face on the thumbnails because you're such a big part of the channel. So that would be my only other recommendation here.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you're in something like this. You're an artist. You're making music, and I think people are going to care more about you. Yeah. It's not just purely informational, how to fix this part on your car.
Right.
It is specific to you. And then, they're a little busy, so if you could just do fewer elements. I like how you said, but with proper soundtrack. That's something that's trending right now is this, but this, And so I think that could just be the title. Instead of saying you're, explaining that you're enhancing the NFS soundtrack, it could just be NFS, but sounds good. Or maybe it's kind of snarky like that, and then you can put fewer words. And maybe you have room for you and the car.
Yeah, and I think that you bring up a good point, Julia, and I think that part of the reason why there would be just some appeal already, and you're kind of doing this maybe intentionally, people who are familiar with NFS Unbound, you're grabbing an audience that's interested in that, right? So they may not initially be interested in you. So there is some branding element that you are able to kind of leverage by working with this name, the NFS Unbound. So someone who's looking through their recommended and I go, oh, I know that. I'd like to see what this guy has to say about it. And so you do have that element there, but I would still love it if it got to the point where people recognized you for the work you're doing. And then you can kind of utilize the other elements or the other brand a little bit less.
Yeah, totally. Should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, let's move on.
And good video ideas, by the way.
Yeah.
I know we're talking about thumbnails right now, but your video ideas, I think you're killing it.
Okay, next up we're looking for, this is all one word, Awesome Player 98.
Said all one word and I still did spaces.
Today, my friend by
Minecraft. Okay. Cool. Okay, to me, the first thing that stands out is kind of there's low contrast. Like this first one, you've got dark background with dark text, and it kind of makes it all just fade away, and nothing really pops. But I do like how simple they are. You're only using one word with a lot of your thumbnails. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely some here that are a little bit better. So I'm looking at some of this one. So this one here, it says secrets. Again, like what Julia said, I love the simplicity of the thumbnail. I love the simplicity of this thumbnail specifically.
Yeah.
I love the word secrets, even though there's a character kind of on top of the word. You can still tell what the word says. The character in the background is just dark. And so probably what I would recommend doing, and I mentioned this earlier, is just doing a little outline, like a white outline around the character. Trying to either brighten up the character a little bit. Having a dark background isn't necessarily bad if it contrasts the rest of the thumbnail.
Yeah.
And so, you want people to know what it's about and just to pop a little bit. And I think that that's the biggest thing here. Like, obviously, this character is very recognizable from Minecraft. I would see the blocky head and body, like, oh yeah, that's Minecraft. Even as someone who doesn't play Minecraft. So, anyway, even though the thumbnail says secrets, to me that's intriguing right off the bat. You have this Minecraft character that immediately makes me go to the title and go, okay, what secrets are being shared here? 10 secrets you never knew about Steve. So this is about Steve. And anyway, I think that the overall concept is really good. It's just a few of those visual elements that need to pop a little bit more. And I'd say overall, that'd probably be the general recommendations I'd give. Here on this thumbnail, How Minecraft Works, episode 7. I love the face there, making kind of a funny face. You have an arrow and a circle. The arrow and circle element, I'd probably just blow up a little bit bigger. You have this box with what looks, I'm going to sound really dumb here, some sort of code or numbers or something like that. I would just blow up the 9 FPS, maybe make the arrow a little bit bigger. The messaging on that thumbnail is not totally clear of exactly what you're going to get. But anyway, I'd say overall, visually speaking, there are some here that have some merit. But yeah, overall, especially some of the more recent ones, are just a little bit dark.
Yeah, right. And even just, making like that 9 FPS, making it a little bigger. So even if it's intriguing and they still don't understand the whole video,
right,
at least the part that's intriguing stands out enough for people to see the text. All right, next one.
Yeah, okay, we're going to be looking at Molly's Fine Art. I think it's 3 separate words. Hopefully we can find it.
Does that look
I
right?
think that looks right. All right. All right, kind of first thoughts for me here. Let's kind of look through a couple. Some pretty good consistency here. I mean, there's a lot of different elements, but overall, decent consistency. I'm seeing the same font, a couple fonts that I'm seeing throughout most of these thumbnails. These are obviously all very visual. Colored pencils, very visual. They're very simple. These last few are very simple. Some of these do feel a little bit more busy, kind of down here, like maybe just a lot of text or something like that. But on this especially like this one here, this little row, these two right here look pretty simple. I don't know. What do you think, Julia?
Yeah, I agree. I really like these two that you pointed out. It looks really good. Like that strawberry looks awesome. And I think people that are interested in art would love to learn to make things similar to that. One thing you could try, like you have the words colored pencil on both of those. You could just throw maybe 3 colored pencils over it, or, cut them out and overlay them using Canva.
Yeah.
And then that'll probably kind of catch the eye of anyone that does like colored pencils without them having to read that text. Because every second that people are scrolling through thumbnails is just, you're not guaranteed that they're going to read even 2 words, especially when they're smaller. And I understand that you want those words to be smaller because you want the rest of the image to stand out, especially since it's an art channel.
Yeah.
So any way you can possibly show, not tell, is good. And then, just less busy would be really helpful. Like here, you did use colored pencils with the easy layering. That looks really good. I think that would catch people's eyes with the colored pencils, and then the picture, they see that it's art. It's not just, some image. Yeah. definitely utilize the fact that you're making beautiful things.
Yeah. Oh, and I love how how visual these thumbnails can be, and not just visual, but you, I would assume, Molly, are creating these really awesome pieces, and so to be able to utilize those in the thumbnail is really, really cool. I would say simplify a little bit. Some of these with just very few text, blow up the text a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. And then some of these with more text, try to reduce the amount of text, maybe 2-3 words. But then, again, keep the text a little bit bigger. So the text may take up very similar amounts of space as 5 or 6 words, but with less text and bigger text, it's just easier to read, easier to understand. Someone who's just like a split second scrolling through YouTube, they're just going to be able to get a better idea of, if this, not even what it's about necessarily, but just if it's interesting to them.
Yeah.
Anyway.
One more point too on that. So like this hair one, the hair on drafting film, you use the word drafting in the thumbnail, and then you use it twice more in the title. Drafting film, draw colored pencil on drafting film, colored pencil. You only have so much real estate between the title and the thumbnail, so you almost never want to duplicate and use the same word on the thumbnail that you use in the title. Definitely not 3 times. So if you can, just use it once, either in the title or the thumbnail, then people will get all the information they need, and you don't waste space. So yeah.
All right, next up we have Fashion with Drew. That's all one word.
Try again. All one word, like you said. Another thing too, guys, when we're done with these thumbnails, probably do a few more. We're gonna do a general Q&A. I don't know if we explained that you can ask anything, even if it's not thumbnail specific.
There it is. All right. Go to... Okay. Just by the title, I would assume this is about fashion. So we'll just look at some of these most recent thumbnails. This first one, very clear clothing haul, and then I see Old Navy here. I'm having a hard time seeing what the background is. It looks like maybe it's not just text, maybe it's a sweater or a sweatshirt or something, but again, it's really dark and it's hard to kind of see. So it almost just looks like, at first glance, it looks like you have text on top, clothing haul, then those emojis, but then it almost just looks like the Old Navy is just almost another font on there. It's not totally clear that it's an item of clothing. By looking at your other thumbnails, I can kind of see that, it's probably an item of clothing here, and you were just trying to capture the brand name or something like that. But right off the bat, it's just not super interesting visually.
Right. This is good because it's showing that you can get a lot of things right. Like a lot of what we said in our general guidelines, you're hitting the mark on. You were using not a lot of words. I think the connection between how much you're saying in the thumbnail and how much they're getting from the title is really good. With fashion though, I think if you make it more visually appealing, it'll really help. Those jeans, when I read the title, it sounds like, oh, cool, those jeans are probably really cool, but they don't stand out at all with the thumbnail. And so maybe watch some videos on product photography. Learn how to take really cool pictures of jeans and shoes and things like that. And then, in this case, contrary to what we said before, I'm curious what you think. I would probably make the text a little smaller. Okay. Just so that those clothing items stand out a little more. They wouldn't have to be. If you were able to make the clothing stand out more, maybe, they're more contrast between the clothing and whatever it's laying on and things like that. If you're able to make it stand out more, even the Epic Levi's denim is probably good, but the one with the rad Nikes, the text just might be too overpowering to where you don't see anything else.
Right. Yeah, and I'd agree with you a little bit. There are some of this text, like on the rad Nikes, it's really big text. We do love big text, but it kind of covers up potentially what could be more visually interesting than the text itself. That I think you brought up a good point. maybe, making the text a little bit smaller would help, but also just helping the image pop a little more.
Yeah.
So understanding a little bit more about product photography. Even we mentioned on a couple other thumbnails, highlighting putting a little outline around the shoes or around the pants or whatever it is, just help it pop a little bit more. I get that it's difficult. You can only zoom in on the pants so much before people can't realize what it is. And that's probably what happened here in this most recent thumbnail. So it's probably just a little bit of everything, help the images, and especially in fashion, you want the images to look maybe a little more professional. And again, that goes against something that we said earlier where, kind of something that we're seeing trending very recently is that we do get these very screenshot style thumbnails. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And I would have to say, Drew, with 177 subs and then your video a month ago, 175 views, I mean, you're not getting terrible view counts for the size of your channel. So I think some of these just little tweaks on your thumbnails could probably make a pretty big difference since you're already getting decent views for the size of your channel. So anyway, Just a couple little things. I wouldn't say you're too far off. So just make some of those tweaks, and I'd be interested to see how it goes for you.
Yeah, and this might be a case where it's helpful to use some of those exercises talked about in the beginning and notice, do other people with fashion channels, are they showing their whole outfit, but then maybe the video is still focused on the jeans, but maybe they show a picture of themselves wearing a full, complete outfit that looks really appealing and looks really good. So things like that, just noticing what other people are doing, what you like, and then, but good job on your channel.
Yeah, very well done. Okay, we're gonna make a little bit of a decision here. So we're coming close. We're gonna go for a couple more minutes here. From all the comments that I'm seeing, so many people have submitted their thumbnails for review. So maybe rather than opening it up to total just general Q&A, maybe we just keep going on these thumbnails. We're going to be going live more often on the channel. Yeah. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for us to answer some more of your general questions. And of course, whenever we publish a video, we try to be good in the comments to answer your questions there. So what do you think? Should we just kind of do a couple more thumbnails so that we can get through as many as possible?
That's a good idea. Let's do it.
All right, let me get back to where I was. Okay, let's look at Angry Owl Outdoors, all one word. Hopefully we can get through a couple more here in the next few minutes. And thank you guys so much for submitting your thumbnails. It's so fun to look and see what you guys are actually doing and to see that so many of you have so many great elements in your thumbnails and are doing a great job. So thank you for being here this morning. It's been awesome. All right. Angry Owl Outdoors. So I think this line's the most recent.
Yep.
Okay. That's probably about the size. Is that about the size of the thumbnail when you're scrolling through?
It's only slightly smaller.
Slightly smaller.
Yeah, we'll
okay,
zoom
they're
in
a little bigger.
And we want you guys
I want to give you a fair
too.
shake.
Yeah.
Because when they're super small, even from here, I can barely see them. So okay. So your first thoughts.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Kind of some of my first thoughts on some of your thumbnails here. So this first one, the text to me sticks out pretty well just since the rest of the thumbnail is pretty dark. The rest of the thumbnail, so a couple elements that really caught my attention. The text, of course, the glowing orb, and then, you can see some of the light on half of your face. So that's kind of where my eyes went. Light the night, we have this lantern, and then a little bit of light on you. I'm a little bit torn on this one. I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are, Julia. It's not the whole entire thumbnail isn't super eye-catching. I just only think that's because it's a little bit dark.
Yeah.
However, given the topic, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's a really tough situation is to, show nighttime without making it too dark. And I think that's a big aspect of this thumbnail. If you were doing a video that was just about, an overnight camping and maybe you're really playing up survival overnight, then it's probably necessary to just keep this dark and figure out ways to still make it stand out. Mm-hmm. For something like a camping light, you could do maybe 2/3 of the screen is just showing the product in a well-lit room and people can see that it's a camping light, and then maybe 1/3 of it is maybe it's just a picture of it at night or lit up. You could just do an image of it in a well-lit room and just obviously it would be off. what you did isn't bad. Not at all. But if you could brighten yourself up just a little bit, and I would say overall zoomed in as well. Like if it were, again, like a lot of your videos are survival. So if this one were overall survival, then you do kind of want to see the context of where you're at. But I don't think we need to see so many trees and things because you're just showing a light. And so if both you and the light were a little bit bigger, I think that would benefit. But I don't want to get too like hyper focused on one video here because you have a lot of different kinds of videos. A lot of your videos, I've actually checked out your channel before. A lot of your videos do really well with the survival ones. Like this is your best video, and I think this one is a great example of how to do it right because you are pretty much as zoomed in as possible to still give the context of what's going on. And a lot of, to me, it's a little hard to see what's going on, but in this niche, in this area of YouTube, people that are doing videos like this, it kind of is. And so they're probably used to having to look a little harder to see what's going on, even though to me at first glance, this one with the backpacks, that's a great thumbnail.
Yeah.
It's a really good pictures. Here, if you could just make it look a little bit more, just things stand out a little more. The colors all kind of blend together a bit to me. What are your thoughts? I know you've had a lot of experience in niches like this. Yeah,
on these outdoor niches, you said something that I really agree with and this is something that generally goes for anyone who's listening today, like your niche, there's also this whole element. So we have very general advice, right? That we're kind of some of these elements that we would recommend having or not having. But then you have to also look at what's normal in your niche. And this is a great example of that because some of these thumbnails and a lot of outdoor related thumbnails you see, like it's hard to get the whole picture, like the winter survival night shelter. It's hard to get the whole picture, but also be zoomed in close enough that it's easy to see. But there's this expectation in the outdoor community that people who are looking for outdoor videos or are being recommended outdoor videos, they're going to get that. They're going to look at that picture and go, oh, he's winter camping, right? And there's a fire there. Like it's going to be clear because of who your niche is. And so you don't have to be too hard on yourself because there's going to be people who YouTube should be recommending your videos to people who would expect to see the style of thumbnail or title that you're doing. So the only other thing that I would say is, on a couple of these, like the bushcraft steak one or the light the night, if you really do like this style that you've done, again, I'd go back to kind of the outlining the most important parts. Maybe, on the best surviving camping light, you could have zoomed in on yourself a little bit more and then highlighted the outline of yourself and then maybe, I don't know, put an arrow to the light or something like that. So if you really did want to stick with that more natural feeling thumbnail, but you could just add a couple little elements that would just help you pop a little bit more. But other than that, some pretty good thumbnails here.
Absolutely. And like this bag here in the corner, that's a really good picture of the bag. You might zoom in a little bit. I know you also want the context that it's outdoors. But then the text, like the bushcraft, almost entirely disappears. Yeah. You wouldn't even have to have it. It could just say year loadout. Yeah. But if you are going to have a word, make sure it stands out. Otherwise, it's kind of just cluttering. But your thumbnails are actually pretty darn good. So.
Yeah. All right, let's do one. Let's look at the channel Frosty and then space and then Lone Wolf, one word. Frosty Lone Wolf did ask in the comments if you need to be a Project 24 member to get your channel reviewed, and the answer is no. We will review anybody's channel, as many as we can get to at least. We're happy to review your channel here, and very, very excited to do so. All right, so let's take a look at some of your more recent thumbnails here and see what we can see. All right, first thoughts for me. I can definitely see some good consistency here. The branding consistency I like. I can, you've done sort of these borders along the outline or along the outside. I kind of actually like that. It's subtle, but then anytime someone who's kind of looking for a video like yours, it's pretty easy to see. So I actually kind of like the border. I don't see that super, super often, but I kind of like it. A few things that I'd maybe improve. Some of your photos are just, I'd say, a little bit zoomed out. Since you are on the thumbnail, I'd probably get a little bit closer to the camera or zoom in on the photo a little bit more. You're still going to be able to tell that you're outdoors, but your face is going to be a better, standout element. And then some of the text is just hard to read. And I think that's just because of the environment that you're in. But probably what I would do there, and I think I've only said it like 50 times now, outline the text. If you have the white text, outline it in a darker color. If you have kind of, again, any lighter text, outline it darker color, darker text, outline it in a lighter color. That will just help your text stand out. If you have to, you could even put like a solid background behind the text, which you have done. I see, I think it's your 8th video back. You did that, and that really, really helps. That really, really helps the text.
Yeah, especially with the trees in the background, the words. They're really hard to read on some of these. You could also consider not using very many words, if any, like this basil one. The basil already, I kind of like the way it stands out. If you zoomed way in on the basil, and it doesn't take a lot of like skills. You don't need total Photoshop skills to cut something out. It can be kind of surprising. The green on green is probably the worst candidate for this. But with a lot of you, like if you have an object and you want it to pop a little more, there's a lot you can do. Just put it into Canva. It's not that hard. You can cut it out. It'll automatically like recognize the object and cut it out, especially if there's contrast between the background. So for example, with this basil one, if you put like a sheet of contrasting color, white or anything but green pretty much, behind it, take a picture of the basil, put that on Canva, then you could take a picture of the background and yourself. Then you can overlay, and if this sounds complicated, I promise it's not that hard, overlay the basil, and then you can even do things like dim the background a little bit or put a filter on the background to make the background a different color from the basil. Because this is a hard situation here. Like you want that basil to stand out, and the pot of the basil stands out, but you also want it to be outdoors, and maybe you want the background of those trees. Well, you have all the same colors here, so how do you possibly make it contrast when there's no contrast? But if you add like a filter, and pretty much the only way to do that is to cut it out. Canva is one of the easiest. You could use Photoshop if you're able to do that, but definitely play around with that. It really isn't probably as hard as you might think. And that goes for a lot of your channels probably. If you're trying to get an element to stand out and it just feels like there is no way, even the one we just reviewed with the light, you could maybe have some tricks there to make the background brighter and still the object that you're trying to show.
Okay, let's look at another one. It's the channel Give It a Go Bakes. All right. Hi, Amy. It's good to see you. Amy's in Project 24. I got to spend some time with her, and I'm kind of a mastermind a little bit ago. And just super good stuff that you're doing on this channel, Amy. And so you were next up here, and I wanted to get to your thumbnails here. So initial thoughts, I have to say I'm really liking the direction that you're going here. So first of all, the elements here are big. Your face is big in the thumbnail. Whatever it is you've baked here is also very large, and it's you kind of have this blur behind you, which kind of helps you pop out, and then you have this slice of whatever it is you made. Looks like cake, delicious looking cake, I might add, and then you're holding the pan of, I would assume, the same cake. So overall, I really like what you have going on here. Your face is bright, it's up close. Julia, any elements you would recommend adding here? Pretty consistent. I should also say very consistent on these most recent thumbnails. It looks like you've made some thumbnail changes maybe just a couple months ago, and I think it's a good direction. Yes.
I think as much as you can, you're already like really zoomed in, as much as you can learn about food photography, because it's such a competitive space anyways. It's going to be really hard to compete with everybody else making delicious looking food. So the more you can learn to just take pictures of that food and make it look really amazing, the better. I like what you're doing with cutting yourself out. I don't know if anybody else noticed, but it's just what I was talking about a second ago, is you're cutting yourself out so that you're not trying to get yourself holding the food and everything in one shot. You're piecing together the elements later, which is working really well for you. I think just try, and I'm not a professional photographer, but if you can make these desserts look just a little bit more eye-catching, like these ones look really awesome. I like this. The butter cheesecake cups, that looks really great. Even this one, you made it intriguing. I remember taking a look at that one before. as much as you can. Like, that's super pretty. And I like how the background is very blurred. So that makes the cake stand out more. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Keep blurring the background and just try to get the food. You know, even here, you might not need a background at all. If you can blur the background totally or almost totally, they don't need to see those ingredients because then the food will pop more. You want to make people's mouths water so that they stop and think, how do I make that?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank
good
you.
Thumbnails,
Appreciate it. Yeah, good thumbnails. Everyone, thank you so much for submitting your thumbnails this morning. We're going to have to call it here. It has been so fun hanging out with you, looking at your thumbnails. Hopefully you've been able to take away something helpful today. Even if we didn't get to look at your thumbnail, hopefully we'll have another chance in the future, or that you've been able to at least see some examples and kind of what our thought process is. I will mention, and of course this is totally optional, but we are offering some more in-depth help if that's something, some more one-on-one in-depth help. If you want to go look at channelmakers.com, you'll see that kind of offering right on our homepage there. So if you are just needing a little bit of extra help and just don't know quite where to go with the channel, go check out channelmakers.com and we'd be able to hopefully get you some one-on-one help there. But thank you again, everybody, for joining us on this live. It's been super, super fun. It's just awesome to be with you. Thank you for the support, and we'll see you guys later.
Yeah. Awesome thumbnails, everybody.
Yeah.